الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ورحمة الله على أعدائهم من يومنا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آيات ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Before I commence with the few minutes of your valuable time in my lecture, I'd like to apologize for any delay I may have caused and wasted your time in the wait for me to arrive here. But unfortunately, A406 was extremely busy. And thank God it wasn't A420. It might have been even more busier. This ayah that I've selected is from Surah Jumu'ah, which a lot of us recite in private prayers. It says, هُوَ الَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولٌ مِّنْهُمْ. Means, He it is who has brought down amongst the people, هُوَ الَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ, amongst the people, رَسُولٌ مِّنْهُمْ, a prophet from amongst them. First point of this is this word huwa. Huwa is a very important word in Arabic grammar, which is trying to depict or represent in our mind a absence of an absolute kind. Huwa alladhi ba'atha. It is He who has. But what is He? It's a realization. And what can be that entity who has the strength and the ability to be able to find an individual from amongst the people to send to them as a prophet for them? And that in itself is a huge discussion. One major discussion is the element of it, which says it is He who sent a prophet to the people amongst the people. Or in other words, what the Holy Prophet, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, is that the prophet that He decided to send to the people, He didn't bring him over from China, didn't bring him over from Timbuktu. He brought him over from the people for the people. You know, there's a very important statement in the Capital, which is Karl Marx's book. It says, for the people, from the people. What kind of obnoxious realization for a disbeliever to have, whilst we as believers do not have that realization. That our representatives have to be from the people, for the people. In other words, we have to realize that an individual who has a realization of what is the needs of the society rises from that society to guide that society towards the message of Allah. And that is where it's very important to understand and see events which are unfolding in the world. That you've got a bunch of headcutters who are coming from all over the world to a place called Syria and trying to say that we are representing the people of Syria. You know, there's ISIS, there's this entity which calls itself Muslim, is representing Islam when in itself, if you look at the characters in that, they're people who have been raised up by people who have nothing to do with the deen. These people who undertook this event in Paris, of course God condemned these people, we condemn these people. But the point is, how can they possibly be called Muslims when the week before this person who is involved as the representative of this gang was running a pub, a bar? How can they be representatives of Muslims? How can they act in any way be defined as from the people, for the people? Impossible. Yet still, we ourselves are not understanding this principle of what from the people, for the people means. وَالَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ. Then not only does it stop at that point, then he says this individual who is from the people, for the people, what is his role? This ayat really is defining that. What is the role of this individual who is from the people, for the people? The ayat says, وَالَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتٍ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. In other words, immediately after saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to send a person. And let me just stress a little bit on this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the employer of the Prophet. I'm trying to put it in a very, not a casual way, but just kind of realizing what it means. Allah is He who brought a person from the people for the people. In other words, He is looking at who would be the best person in that society to employ as a prophet for the people. So He says, okay, it is He who sent down. So He decides that there is a person I need for these people, these idol worshippers, these people who dance around the Khane Kaaba on Hajj and all sorts of obnoxious and audacious things that they do. In that environment, He's finding someone to be raised to be a prophet. Can you just imagine the ultimate consequences that he's thinking will come face to face with? That will be a bunch of troublemakers who will not care two hoots about this person who's coming out from amongst them. Yet still, I'm going to invest in him as the prophet. So what is really happening is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating an environment where even though the environment may be the most obnoxious environment, the most outrageous environment, the most corrupt environment, if we select the right individual, that corruption can be resolved. MashaAllah. That's what this is trying to say. He's saying, I'm going to find someone amongst these people to kick the hell out of them, to correct their way of thinking. Because I know that what is needed is that individual who's amongst them, who is the most pious, the most competent, the most deendar, the most religious. In other words, immediately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not only presenting a definition for the leader of his deen, but also the leaders of the future aspect of his deen. Not what we say in Urdu, halal panju ko bitha dein. No, God is being very delicate, very cautious. He could have gone to, there's a lovely situation regarding Hazrat Shuaib, Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was known to be the person who created the weights, the scales that we have. He was the one who created the scales. But it was at a time when the economy in that community where Hazrat Shuaib was the prophet, they used to enjoy cheating each other. They would give less, take more, give less. So Hazrat Shuaib, in his prophetic desire to create piety in his community, said, look, you're cheating each other. Let me find a tool by which the buyer would know what he's buying, the seller would know how much he's selling. You look at what our deen is. It's not what these people, absurd people who think that deen is anybody who's a kafir just chop off his head. At the moment in this world, Muslims are being presented as two sides or two ends of a corrupt environment, or two ends of two ends of misrepresentation of the deen. You've got one which is the head cutters, and then you've got the others. If you go onto the internet, one side you've got the head cutters, and on the other side you've got the self cutters. And that's what's being represented as Islam. That is what's being represented as Islam. The middle band, which is us, who cares about the religion. Who is this, what this prophet is being defined as? That within the most corrupt, how do you find the solutions for that corruption? And this is what the ayat is then saying. So the first stage of such an individual is that his responsibility is that make the people realize what are the signs of the Creator. Yatlu alayhim ayat doesn't mean that he sits there and starts reciting the Quran in front of people. Yatlu alayhim ayat means to explicitly define to the people what are the signs of the Creator. In other words, he's given the responsibility first to get people to realize what is their true aqidah. What are the true aqaid of a believer? Nahi what we say, ye to hamara aqidah hai. What's our aqidah? Ek pair pe khaya ke nazar denge. Yeah, these aren't aqidahs. These aren't realities. All these absurd things. If you don't send the chain letter to people, your house is going to get burnt down. What are these absurdities? These are not aqidahs. These are not aqaid. Aqidah doesn't mean corrupt attitudes. Aqidah means to identify that which links you with the Creator. You know what aqd means? Aqidah comes from the word aqd. Aqd means a bond. That's why when people go through a marriage, they say that they've had an aqd. In others, they've created a bond between two people. And the word Arbaeen comes from that same foundation word, that creation of bond. With what? When you're talking about ideology, when you're talking about theology, when you're talking about religious belief, then this aqidah is not an act between a husband and wife. This is an act between you as the created, between that who has created you. It is creating that relationship, that identity, that closeness of really and truly eliminating everything that is mahram between you and him. You know, when somebody gets married, it's said that the person who knows the most mahram things about you is your wife. Likewise, the husband knows the most mahram things about his wife. That's why it's highly recommended that you don't end up your marriages into divorces, because you know that something's known by somebody. Okay, so you have to be very cautious. So Aqd is a relationship which eliminates all mahramiyat. If you get to know God, then can you imagine the closeness that you can create with yourself and your Creator? That is what this ideology or aqidah, or this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Nabi is trying to get those disbelievers, those ignorant people of the time of the Jahiliyyah to realize the truth. But then you see, we say that this is the time of the Jahiliyyah. We say that, don't we? You say, Rasul Akram aayat hai, ek zamana tha jo jahilon ka zamana tha, zamane Jahiliyyah tha. But they were not jahil. Who tells you the reason that they were jahil? They were not ignorant. They were people of the time of the Holy Prophet. It wasn't the time of the Jahiliyyah in the sense that which means ignorant and not knowing things. The definition of Jahiliyyah or Jahil is not one who doesn't know. The peak of Jahiliyyah is knowing and not practicing according to that which you know. That is Jahalat. That is being Jahil. In other words, you know that you should be fasting, but you don't fast. You know you should be praying, but you don't pray. You know you shouldn't be burying your daughters, but you bury your daughters. You know that if you're getting a daughter from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a wiladat, you don't say, my God, what are you bringing me a daughter for? I want a son. That is Jahiliyyah. That is Jahiliyyah, where what you know is a fact, you do not put into practice. That is why the time of the Holy Prophet was known as the time of the Jahiliyyah, because of the fact that those who were there knew what they should be doing. Do you think they didn't know that they shouldn't bury their daughters? Do you think that they didn't know that they shouldn't be fighting for ages and ages, generation upon generation? They're fighting with each other, and the only thing which stopped them from fighting were the months of which were haram for them to fight. Otherwise, even if those months of haram being for them to fight was there, they'll be fighting throughout the year. But did they not know? Does that mean they didn't know because they were jahil? No, they knew. Yet still they did not practice. That made them jahil. So you could see in our day and age, we too may be the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, but we would be no shorter than the Abu Jahals of the time of the Holy Prophet, because we're not practicing what the deen is asking us to practice. There's a lovely saying from Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam. He says to tell my Shias that they're not part of me unless they practice according to what I tell them to do. Just imagine you say to your wives or your wife that, I have great affection for you, but don't do a single thing at home. You see how quickly the love will be demonstrated to you. And that is what it is. We keep on saying, oh, to Muhammad, Ahle Bayt ko chahne walon se hain, Ahle Bayt ko chahte hain, magar ek rakat namaz nahi padhte. Hum Ahle Bayt ko chahte hain, magar aise waise sajde karte hain jo haram hai sajde karte. Is that the deen? Is that the muhabbat? Is that the love that the sacrifice of Karbala was meant to generate? Yet still we see one aspect. Alhamdulillah, the sisters over here are well hijabed, inshallah, and everything. But what do we see? For 2 months and 8 days, Bibi Zainab ki chadar, Bibi Zainab ki chadar, Bibi Zainab ki chadar होएंगे. फिर नौ रबी अव्वल को नंगे सर घूमे निकलेंगे. तो क्या फायदा वो चादर का? What was the purpose of that commemoration of Bibi's chadar? Karbala's 10th of Ashura without the Utadi getting my Alabad Khawatin person. What's the use of that commemoration? When after them 2 months and 8 days, the 9th of Rabiul Awwal is celebrated as God's gift to Guna. It's not. So the first thing that this prophet is being told to do is to teach people about his aqidah. وَالَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولٌ مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتٍ. And he's not told to stop there, that you told people, look at the tree, God's grown it. You know, if you didn't know how the tree was grown, then you won't recognize the creation. Look at the breath that God has given you. You don't. I remember last time I said this, you were here, it's pertinent in this discussion as well. That Saadi, who was an Iranian poet, he said that if only mankind knew how to knew how to be gratitude, knew how to be grateful for two things, then after that he need not be grateful for anything. And he says, what are those things? Those two things? The breath that comes in and the breath that goes out. For if you knew how to be grateful for that, then really that's the whole philosophy behind God's creation. For he who gives us the breath does not give us that breath, what will happen? He who has given us the lungs and everything to take that breath out again, if that doesn't happen, what will happen? If we can express that gratitude, that recognition of gratitude to he who has given this very basic element of our existence, then are we going to be ignorant not to thank him for the wealth he's given us, for the children he's given us, for the believing families that he's given us? These are all gratitudes, risk that he's given us. But sometimes we take the English risk and fight against God. But we should take the Islamic risk and be grateful about God, what he's given to us. So first thing is the ideology. We have to sort our ideology out. We do not make our ideology based on those who say Ali Rabb. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only Rabb. Ali cannot be he who is a creation of Allah, be Rabb as well as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He who is created cannot be a Rabb similar to he who is creating him. Yet we have people amongst our community who say, when they say, they don't say Salam, they say Ali Rabb. Ali Rabb kya? They're rubbing out Ali when they're saying Ali Rabb. But in reality, Ali is a creation of Allah. Mawla Ali is a makhluk, he is not a khaliq. That is where our ideologies need to be understood and realized. If we don't realize these ideologies, then we are going to get corrupted and confused about these things. And if we're not cautious, you will have the occupants of this minbar giving you false ideologies, giving you corrupt ideologies, and those corrupt ideologies will be the cause of our own destruction. You may not be aware, just a few days back, our dear friend Yasir Habib has produced a new few minutes drama about ISIS. It's gone on his Fadak TV. A small drama of few minutes, 5 minutes drama, in which he's got a clan of 3-4 people dressed up like ISIS, saying, we're going to go and blow up something, we're going to do this, that and the other. They've got all their masks, and then they've got their suicide vests. And then what he's done, because you know he's a very divisive person, he loves creating Shia-Sunni conflict. What he's done then, between the West and the body of this guy, he's put a Sahih Bukhari. And the guy goes into a mosque, blows himself up, underneath it says, explosion in a mosque in London. And then afterwards, there's a little corner, where then he's cursing the muqaddasat of our Sunni brothers. Do you think this is going to help us in any way? This is the false aqidah. When all our marajis say it is haram for us to insult the muqaddasat of the other believers of our Muslim community. For it is this principle which is being used by the enemies of Islam to create further dissension in Islam. The more we create a need for creating unity and correcting our aqidah, the more we will be able to confront the enemies of Islam. You have another obnoxious and evil person who's renowned in Pakistani members as somebody called Jafar Jatoi, thank you, where he's sending all sorts of evil messages for the community. Are these the aqidas that وَالَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولٌ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ is trying to get to us? These false and negative messages for those who do not know what is the true message of the Ahlul Bayt to sit and rely on. In one of his messages, this evil person, in one of his messages, he's going around saying, I don't know whether the Allama is a halal zada or I've never lived behind his house. Is this what this mimbar is meant to be occupying? It is not the fault of the mimbar, it is the fault of the recipients of this mimbar as well. You know, you've got other people, you know, on Pakistan's site, there's a picture of Qaid Azam. One picture of Qaid Azam is with a big beard, saying this is the picture of Qaid Azam for the Taliban. Then there's a picture of Qaid Azam without a beard, tie and everything. This is the picture of Qaid Azam for the secular people. Then there's a picture of Qaid Azam which looks like a horse and says this is the picture of the Qaid Azam of the Shias. Why? Because an occupant of this mimbar called Mr. Zamir Akhtar says that Qaid Azam was born because his grandmother did a dua with the Zuljana. And we should not thank God for the creation of Pakistan, we should thank Zuljana for the creation of Pakistan. That's why they have the audacity to create Qaid Azam looking for like a horse, because it is our aqidah, or is it our aqidah of this mimbar? Is it our responsibility of this mimbar to allow weird thoughts to be the cause? But then, when he said this, that Qaid Azam was, Pakistan was born and we should be grateful for Zuljana, the whole crowd in front was like, wow, 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 Maulana, wow, wow, wow. Wow. Salawat. So if the community gets corrupt, I was saying to you, when this Hazrat Shu'aib created this scale, because I haven't lost track of my speech, I promise you. When Hazrat Shu'aib created the scale was taken to the king of the time. The king looked at it, his wazir said, Shu'aib ne banaya. He looked at it, he said, what's the purpose of it? He says, you know, our people are cheating each other. So Shu'aib feels that he can assist the community by creating the scale. He said, oh, dump it, let them kill each other. Because, you know, in leadership's role is divide and rule. The more you can divide, the more comfortable you are, because the unity of a community is not there to kick you out. So let them kick themselves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his azab on Hazrat Shu'aib's community. Not just this king's community, not those who were cheating people, but the whole community of about 200, 300,000 people. Everybody. Hazrat Shu'aib ke manne walon par bhi aur na manne walon par. Okay? Where's Khuda's adalat? Surely those who believed in Hazrat Shu'aib, they would have used that skill. So why did God throw his whole wrath on everybody? Why do you think he threw his wrath on everybody? Lord, the reason why was given to us few hundred, maybe thousands of years later by Imam Jafar Sadiq. They asked him, I mean, what is this God's adalat? You know, surely he should have, fused up with all those who were disbelievers. Why also not the hell out of the believers? Our sixth Imam said, those who followed Shu'aib were also destroyed because whilst in front of them a guna was taking place, they never stood up against it. In other words, the whole purpose of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar was ignored by Hazrat Shu'aib's community. Because it was ignored, they were as responsible for the corruption that was being taking place in the community as those who were come before. That is the true aqidah. Where deen is being trampled over, it is the responsibility of those who have the rationale of the deen to present it and let people realize what is the truth about the Ahlul Bayt. And it's very important, yes, it's very important, alhamdulillah, almost 30 million people went to Karbala, to Ziyarat of Imam Hussain on Arbaeen. It's the biggest single, even Guinness Book of Records is not interested because it knows it will get sussed up. With all, the Pope's possession. And look at this. Only 3 million people, and they create a stampede where hundreds and thousands of people get killed. Yet still we have 30 million people. Not one person is killed under the feet. Yes, they will be killed under the bomb of ISIS, which they don't care two hoots about, the Shohada, because we have an ideology that we are part of Imam Hussein's movement. So it doesn't make any difference. In fact, it's a success for us, like it was a success for those who were following Imam Hussein in Karbala, that they knew that when Imam Hussein said on the night of Ashura that they will be becoming shaheed, that they could see their position on this earth, and they could see their position in heaven. At that point, whilst they were there. So you can understand that whilst we have 30 million people going there, can you imagine if all these 30 million people were to turn around and go towards Mosul? Do you think ISIS will exist? So what is our purpose? Do you think when Imam Musi Kazim a.s. was in prison, that people did not go to Karbala to the ziyarah of Imam Hussein? It's an important, relevant thing. But the point is, are we challenging that which is a necessity to challenge as a Shia?
Inshallah.
Or is it just a possession? We may continue to do millions of possessions. But do those possessions have any meaning in the relevance of it? This coming Sunday we're going to have a Julus. Arbaeen. As I said, the world is demonstrating Muslims as two corners, the head cutters and the self cutters. And last year, somebody wanted to bring a shabi of Hazrat Ali Asghar with a huge arrow stuck in it, with blood on that door, and carrying that as a shabi. Is that what we want to show to the Europeans, that this is what Shia is? Or do we not have any other way of giving the message of Imam Hussein? We have a responsibility. We should not be taking that responsibility lightly. We have a duty to make sure that those who are becoming alam bardars of our message are those people who want to give the message in its pure and sound manner. If we don't give it, then this yatlu alayhim ayat means nothing. Because you see, after yatlu alayhim ayat, the ayat says where you zakihim. Then after you learn the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the Prophet's responsibility is to purify you from your fasad. Where you zakihim. His role is to purify you, to make sure that those things which would distance you from that Creator that you come to understand, remove that from you. In Surah Shams it says, for Alhamaha, Fujuraha wa Taqwaha, that the soul has been inspired to know what is good and what is bad. In other words, it is not an excuse to say, I didn't know anything about it. The soul has already been notified of what is good and bad. It is your duty to make sure you enlighten the goodness of the soul and depress the foulness of the soul. But if you do not do that, and think that my purification is purely by my tongue, purely by my tongue saying, I love the Ahlul Bayt, or purely by my tongue that whenever something happens I say Alhamdulillah, or because the Saudis every time they say Alhamdulillah, every time they say Inshallah, we will kill the Yemenis, Inshallah, yeah? We will bomb the Lebanese, Inshallah. There's no meaning of Inshallah. And do you know something as a depth of understanding that this event which is happening in Syria, is not an ittifaqi Arab Spring. Maybe you might be familiar, in 1998, 1997, there was a big Arab meeting in Taif. A huge meeting in Taif. All the Arab League came over. And you know what they were planning in that meeting? They were planning how to get together an Arab army to kick the hell out of the Hezbollah in Lebanon. That was their aspiration. To beat the hell, destroy Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and his group. You know what Bashar al-Assad said in that meeting? Because that is where the root of this evil is. In that meeting he says, aren't we Arabs such brave people that we're ready to create an army to kill another group of Arabs, but we're not willing to take an army to Tel Aviv? And they fused up. And that is where the aspiration to eliminate Bashar al-Assad came. So one has to realize, yes, he's not the prince of all princes. Yet the rationale is not the God-given right to destroy that which is an opposing entity. But we have to realize that the Aqidah is not just a Zabani Aqidah. Purification is not just a I love the Ahlul Bayt message. It's the performance of the deen. But how is that deen then nurtured? Is the rest of this ayat. It says, وَالَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولٌ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتٍ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. Then he has the responsibility to teach people about the book. Not just teach people the book, it says about the book. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتٍ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. In other words, teach people about the book. Yeah? We have, in Jang Siffin, Qurans were put on the standards. On Karbala, on the events of Karbala, there were hundreds of people who were Hafiz al-Quran. When Imam Hussain wanted to recite his last namaz, salat, they said, your salat is not going to be accepted. As if their salat was going to be accepted. So you can see, there's an aspect of visual performance, and there's an aspect of ilmi performance. That which is not performed on the back of knowledge is irrelevant. You must know why you're praying, and you must know who you're praying to. Otherwise your salat will go to Washington and not to Makkah. You have to be cautious where your qibla is. You must know about it. For if you do not know about it, you might as well just do an exercise. So it says, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. In others, his responsibility, third responsibility. First is to get people to know their aqidah. Second is to assist them to purify their corruptions. Third, to get them to know about the book for which they say they know it. There are three things. There are three things in Islam which will complain to God on the Day of Judgment. That we were mahjur, we were ignored, we were neglected. First thing that will complain to God that we were mahjur, we were neglected, will be the Quran. For our Qurans are on the top of the cupboards. Or when the girl is getting married, to putting over her head. When the person dies, at least a few Quran or ayats of the Quran that we remember. Or alternatively, when somebody is going on trip, we just blow the Quran in their face, or pages only. What do we do with the Quran? Is it not mahjur? Is it not left on the side to be used on a relevant day? When in reality, the Quran has its own barakat. Even for a person who does not see, it gives barakat to him when he just opens the pages on his face. Second thing which will say that we were left behind and neglected will be the masajids and the centers, where people do not turn up to those centers. When there's dua, there's nobody there. When there's namaz, there's nobody there. The centers, the masajids will complain to God that we were left to become derelict. And thirdly, I don't want to include my union, but we ulama would also complain to God, those who want to represent the community, that we were available but nobody took any use of our guidance. These would complain to God. But the most important one who would complain most to God will be the Quran. When Quran has so much barakat, we've made non-use of it. There's a saying which says, if the Quran is being recited on land, angels look at it as if there's small lights shining from the ground. And that shining is a reality, brothers and sisters. For I might have said it to you, I don't remember, this is an example which I've used in this particular section a lot. There was a person in Iran called Saluki Araki. He's buried in the graveyard opposite Hazrat Masuma Salamun Alayha. And there's a small mazar for him. Not a mazar, a mazar. There's a small mazar for him, which people go and visit. Alhamdulillah, it's quite an interesting mazar. Inshallah, if you have the chance and the barakah to go to Qom and do ziyarat of Hazrat Fatima Hazrat Masuma, you'll see. And this ziyarat itself is so important. Ayatul Marashi Najafi. One day in his dua, he used to do dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him the opportunity, because he was renowned for preparing lines of Sadat, in the sense he had a generic definitions of all the Sadat. He had written books about it. The Razavi Sadat, the Naqavi Sadat, the Musavi Sadat. If you could bring to him maybe 6 or 7 generations, he could connect you to one of the Aimai Masumin without any problem. He used to do a dua and he used to cry about it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me the opportunity to know where my grandmother is buried. Because he was a Sayyid. And obviously, when he's saying my grandmother is buried, he's talking about Hazrat Fatima Zahra Salamun alayha. So it's written in his memoirs that once he had a khawb, the khawb says to him, why are you looking for Fatima? When you've got a Fatima in home, all the thawab that you're looking for is acquired from her. So that is there. So this man is buried just on the other side of the haram, on the other side of the canal which is there, in between the one side of home and the other side. This was during the time of Ayatul Bujadi. This man, he couldn't read, he couldn't write, he was a shepherd. But what people had become familiar about him was this, that even though he couldn't read or write or anything, if you gave him some Arabic text, he could tell you which was Quran and which was not Quran in that text. So it came to Ayatul Bujadi's knowledge, and Ayatul Bujadi invited him over, and he says to him, we've come to hear that you can do this. So they brought him a usual text which is studied in the houses and things like that, full of Arabic text with Quranic ayats in it, and an Arabic text of Quranic ayats and so on. Brought it to him and said to him, okay, look at it and tell me what's Quran and what's not Quran. He looked at the whole text, he says, this is Quran, this is not Quran, this is Quran, this is not Quran. And he went through the whole text and said, what is Quran and what's not Quran? And of course, if Ayatul Bujadi was an East Londoner like me, he was like, well, you having me on? But he wasn't. Obviously, he was a more politer person than I. So he says, are you sure you're not cheating or something like that? Are you sure you can read it? He says, no, I can't read a word. I don't know what's what, but I know this is Quran and this is not. So he says, why? How? He says, Agha, when I look at this text, that which is the Quran is shining in my eyes. When something like this, can we leave it as majul? The reward that it can give, can we ignore the reward of it? Can we really and truly think that is irrelevant? But in Quran there's 4 thawab. We forget the thawab and we run after the kabab. But it's the 4th thawab we should be looking at. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the Quran there are 4 thawab. 1 thawab is for the person who can't even read the Quran. He just looks at the text. With what niyat? That these are the words which were revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to my Prophet. With that niyat you're gaining the thawab of the whole Quran. And then after that the 2nd thawab is you can't read, you just know the letters. Be, Sin, Mim, Alif, Lam, Lam, He. You don't know what it is. But with that same niyat, that these are the words which were revealed by the Almighty to my Nabi, that is the 2nd stage of the thawab. The 3rd stage of the thawab is when you could put that Bismillah together and say, this is Bismillah. That is the 3rd, because of that same reason. And the 4th reason is when you want to learn what it's talking about. يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. We read Surah Hamd. How much of it do we know as a meaning? I don't want anybody to put their hands up or not put their hands up. I'm not testing it. Like somebody said in one of these Eid namazes once. He says, those who haven't read the Fajr namaz, can you go and read it qaza on the corner? I don't want to read it qaza if I haven't read it. Why do I want to announce my incompetence about my deen? Go and read your qaza, all 500 people standing, nobody standing in the salah. That's not right. It's an embarrassment for the deen. But anyway, salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So yu'allimuhumul kitaba is this, that the depth of the book is through his meaning. And in the Surah Hamd itself, we say, Alhamdu Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdu, stop at Alhamd. We're saying all praise to Allah. And this Alif Lam in it is what they call the Alif Lam Jins, which means that which defines all aspects of something is being associated to the word hamd and saying Alhamdulillah. In other words, every aspect of hamd that I can do, every aspect of praise that I can even contemplate, every meaning of hamd that is in this is as fast as I can finish my salah. That's what we do. No, 5 minutes, वो भी कम है 3 minutes, वो भी कम है 2 minutes. If we could do it in 1 minute, we'll do it in 1 minute. And the point is, sorry, I will do it. I don't want to suggest that you will. I do apologize. But that is what we're thinking. That is what's being nurtured. कि नमाज के लिए जल्दी पढ़ लेंगे, काम है करने. You know the president who was shaheed in Iran called President Raja'i? You might have heard of him. He was martyred in 1981, 82, I think, with his prime minister, Mr. Raja'i and Hujjatul Islam Bahana. These two people were martyred. Shaykh Raja'i used to say this lovely sentence. He used to say, tell Salat I've got work to do, don't tell work I've got Salat to do. Sorry, this is the other way around. Don't tell work tell Salat, or tell work I've got Salat to do, don't tell Salat I've got work to do. Did you catch that? I've corrected myself? That's what it is. Now we have to tell Salat, or we have to tell work, hang on, let me go and take my first fazilat of my Salat. Ayatollah Mujahidi in Tehran, he used to say, I have met across many ulama, I've talked to a lot of ulama. The only thing which they say as constant amongst each other is that if you want to gain the world, then don't miss your salat on the first occasion of the fazilat. For that fazilat would help you to gain the world. The world will not help you once you've lost the fazilat. Whatever you may earn, whatever you may think is a benefit of missing the salat at a particular time, leaving it to the last 4 minutes or 8 minutes to read the 8 rakat in that few minutes before Maghrib, that's not the benefit of that salat. That is not the ilm of the Quran, which talks about salat being the most important thing, for it saves you from corruption, saves you from fahsha wa munkar. So if obviously, God's message is absolute. When God says if your salat is acceptable, then it's going to protect you from fahsha wa munkar. So if fahsha and munkar is running around you, then for sure your salat is not reaching the place it should reach. But are we assessing ourselves? Are we making that assessment? How much of my life is being absorbed by fahsha and munkar, and how much of my life is being guided by ma'ruf and taqwa? That's what we have to assess, and that's what this ayat is saying. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُ وَيُذَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. But you know what we do when we talk about the Quran? पढ़ा दो बच्चों को Quran. It's not just teaching the kids to read. It's getting the children to know. But there are 2 stages of knowing. Knowing is the meanings, which is good, which is essential. But the other aspect of knowing is what the last part of this ayat is, which says يُزَكِّيهِمْ آيَاتُ, يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ, and then the last bit, وَالْحِكْمَةِ. Teach the book and its wisdom. Its wisdom is the final aspect of the rouge of the mu'mineen. The elevation of the mu'min to the closeness of the Creator is when he understands the wisdom of his book, when he realizes the aims and objectives of this book, when he realizes the truth in this book. And that truth in this book is the closeness to the Creator. And it is this book, if it's properly utilized, it is the tool of justice. It is the tool of what the ayat says in Surah Hadid, which is the 57th Surah of the Quran, ayat number 25. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رَسُولًا بِالْبَيِّنَةِ. That we sent our messengers with a clear argument. The Quran is that bayyinah, the clear argument. So then what? وَأَرْسَلْنَا مَعَهُمْ كِتَابًا وَالْمِيزَانَ. And we have sent down with them the book and the balance. What is this balance? This balance is the moderation. This balance is the realization of what is the time and makan or zaman to do something. It is our responsibility to know what is the right thing to do at the right time. And that's why Imam Khomeini, when he defines the role of a Majlis Taqleed, he says that one of the most important things of a Majlis Taqleed is that he also be aware of the zaman and makan for whom he is giving a fatwa. Not just give the fatwa out of the air and say, hopefully it will drop somewhere. Now he has a responsibility to realize what it is for and where it is applied. Not just announce to people, just do what you like, beat the hell out of yourself, cut the hell out of yourself, send zuljanas anywhere you like, or take people and burn their feet anywhere they like. Look at the time and place, the responsibility of it, of what you're saying. How is it then going to have an impact on the ummah? And not only the ummah, how is it going to have an impact on the non-ummah about you? So the ayat says that the responsibility of the sending of the Nabi, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Jummah, as I said, but he in this ayat is defining that other than just being the bayyana, what does he do once he is a bayyana? What does this Nabi do when he has got this book? The last bit of the ayat says, لَيَقُومَ النَّاسِ بِالْقِسْطِ, so much so that he will conduct himself amongst the people with justice. World security is not based on just for the sake of doing security. It's based on justice. If justice is there, security is there. If injustice is there, then there's no security. You want to go and bomb Syria, but also stop Tel Aviv from killing 130 people in 2 months. Stop them as well. Why aren't you? Every day since the beginning of October, a child has been killed, or youth has been killed, a woman has been killed, a young girl has been killed in the streets of Jerusalem. But is anybody complaining about that? One girl gets killed in 1984, in 1986, sorry, in one of the elections in Iran, in the streets of Tehran. The whole world is screaming and shouting about it. The whole world is shouting about it. But 127 kids and children and people are killed in the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Gaza and other places. Nobody cares two hoots about it. Do we care about it? There's some people like Yasser Habib who say, what's Philistine got to do with us? It's full of falani. But is he an individual to say this rubbish, or somebody like Imam Khomeini and Imam Khamenei and Ayatollah Sistani and everybody saying Philistine is essential for the Muslim Ummah? MashaAllah. Is Yasser Habib so elevated that Imam Khomeini is so belated in front of him? Ayatollah Maqaim Shirazi has said, Ayatollah Maqaim Shirazi is a very prominent Majlis Taqleed in Iran and other places. He says Yasser Habib is either ahmaq, an idiot, or he is being supported by agencies against Islam. He's made it blatantly clear that there is an agency Shiite in the world that we have to be careful about. The world will give you big, huge mosques like they have given to the Salafis and the Deobandis to promote their rubbish. They should be stopped. Why are they not stopped? Why isn't the root of the destruction of the Islam is not being stopped? Yet still, they're going thousands of miles away to bomb some street in Raqqa. Is it manageable? Is ISIS going to stop because of that? They're not. But we have to be alert, as I said. Whilst we have these neck cutters and we have the head cutters and the self cutters, we have to be careful that in between those who are trying to destroy the Shiite message, like the Yasser Habib, like the Zami Akhtars and others, that we have to be careful that they don't become the tool of destroying the Shiite belief. And if justice is to be applied, then what is important to understand, that when justice is applied in its entirety, then those who apply justice become a subject of this bit of the ayat, which is in Surah An'am, which is the 6th surah of the Quran. Ayat number 48, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَهُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. For these people who are doing justice and everything, Quran says that they shall not fear anything and they shall not grieve. So if you are applying, if you are a tool of justice, if you are a messenger of justice, then you should realize that there's no fright in being just. It's a reward. Justice, to be just, is the reward for a person who wants to come close to God. He has to be just in his house, he has to be just with his wife, he has to be just with his children, he has to be just with his parents, the families have to be just, the sisters have to realize this responsibility of justice as well. You know, whilst they want to create a good family household for themselves, they should not forget that their husbands have a responsibility for their mom and dads as well. Wajib al-nafaqah for the mom and dad is as much important as it is for the man to give wajib al-nafaqah for his wife. Sisters have to realize that. That's justice. लेकिन जो आपने बच्चों को नहीं look after कर रहे, मुझे नहीं look after कर, मुझे खाना नहीं मिलता. Nah, he is not depriving you if he's finding wealth to give to his mother and father as well as you. You should not be competing with your husband in the nafaqah. You should not be competing with your husband in the justice if he is being just. Salawat. As much as it's also a responsibility on the male to make sure that he is not spending money here and there and not looking after the affairs of his wife and children. That responsibility is placed. And when that is being done, then there is no khawf, there is no fight in the thing that somebody, you're looking after your children and somebody comes to you and says, "Jo ka ghulam ban gaya." Jo ka ghulam nahi bana main. I'm looking after my family's affairs. That is the realization. That is the understanding that one has to have. That justice doesn't mean slavery. Justice means fulfilling the rights of he who needs justice to be done for him. Oh, that is justice. In others, justice means that if you have to rule against yourself, against your own brother, if he's doing something corruption, then rule against him. Don't say, "Oh, it's my height, so I won't say anything against him." My brother is more important than the injustice that that brother is doing. No, that's wrong. That's haram. So the justice, if one is lined with justice, that there will be no fear and no grief for the person who's being just. It is injustice which should create grief. Why? Because being unjust means you have to answer to the Creator. Should that not give you worry? Should that not give you fright? Should that not give an individual concern that at the end of it I have to go to God to answer to Him? Injustice, where is injustice? If you can't argue with somebody, you start swearing at them. That's injustice. If you don't have rational arguments, it shows how ignorant you are. Not that because you can't argue with the person that you have to swear and curse the individual. Our Imam Masumeen was sworn at, yet still they took them home to give them a sufra of food. And then their ghulams were like Malik Ashtar, where somebody insults him and he goes to the masjid and goes and prays for this individual. These are the ghulams and these are the imams. Where are we in this relationship? That's what we need to evaluate. That's what we need to assess for ourselves when we are commemorating Imam Hussein's shahadat. We look at Imam Hussein's shahadat as just aate hum pulsa dene. In reality, hum apne aap ko pulsa dena chahiye, because throughout the year we've lost the deen and we just come to the Imam Hussein to charge our batteries. That's what's happening. As I said in the beginning, we come with our sisters, we commemorate the chadar of Hazrat Zainab Salamullah Alayha that was taken off her head. But are we encouraging our sisters to become muhajjabin? Are we inviting our sisters to wear hijab? And then some of the sisters turn around and say, "Oh, don't talk to me about this. Yazid did that." But you want your husbands to become Yazids and take your chadar off? Because Yazid did it, he was evil. Why do we want to do taqleed of Yazid and allow our wives to go without chadar, without hijab, without makhna, without rusari or whatever which covers? And then the other important thing, hijab is not just a covering of your head or the body. Hijab is also how you interact with people who are not of your gender. Are you so free as a male that you're continuously communicating, or are you free as a woman continuously communicating with a man who's not your mahram? Of course communication is allowed, but that meaning of hijab has to be seen in that. How is it done? You know, Hazrat Zainab Salamullah Alayha goes into the darbar of Yazid and communicates with him what an evil entity he is. Can our sisters elevate themselves to that level? And beautiful. That is the elevation that we're all looking for. That when somebody can go into that situation, keep themselves composed to the belief and still fight for their rights. It's what's happening to these girls who are being killed in Tel Aviv and other places where they're going out into the streets and demanding their rights and they're being shot at. And the very fact that this ayat says, وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا يَحْزَنُونَ, that they will not have any fight and they will not grieve, is because once they have fulfilled the role of taqwa, they will make sure, they will be granted that closeness to the Creator, that there is nothing to fear about then after that. If I stand for justice and I know that God is with me, what is it that's going to frighten me? The lovely interview which was done in 1981 or 82 when the south of Lebanon was emptied out by the army which was occupying it, the occupation by Tel Aviv which was over there, when a general was interviewed, and he said, I've fought with all sorts of people in my life, all sorts of Muslims, but I don't understand these Shias. So I don't understand these Shias. When we went to Beirut, we could put our guns down on the beach, go for a swim, and come back, and our guns, forget about our guns, they might have put another 50 guns there for us to take. That's how we had control over the place. But after a while, forget the leaving of the guns, we couldn't protect our lives because of these Shias. Why? Because I couldn't understand. He said, I couldn't understand these Shias. One comes and gets killed, there's another 10 behind him to get killed. What is wrong with these people? But they don't understand that once we're with the qist, when we're with the justice, it doesn't fight, there's nothing to frighten us. It is because we are without justice, because of our people, you know, in Pakistan, for example, you think, why are the Shias being so much suppressed? It's largely because their lives are unfortunately being polluted with haram things. Non-stop rishwat, non-stop children passing the exams without sitting the exams, non-stop, do you think if you take in haram, you're going to generate halal from it? When you know that you've cheated, are you going to be so brave and say, I want a job, because you're going to cheat elsewhere? That's why it is haram to cheat. It is haram to take something which is not your haqq. Why? Because it is all against justice. Because justice means if you're taking somebody's haqq, it means you're being unjust to that individual. As I said, justice means even if giving that person his right goes against your needs, you must give that person his rights. And that is the message that we understand and we get from the events of Karbala. The whole meaning of justice is articulated and understood from the events of Karbala. From the day it is launched on the 28th of Rajab to the day of the night of Ashura, Mawla is continuously trying to encourage people to be just. The whole meaning of justice is seen in these events. And look at the events of Karbala in itself. When we look at how it was proceeded from the death of Muawiyah, Lanatullah alayh, to the time when Yazid's army felt that it was victorious on the sands of Ashura, that you could see who is just and who is unjust. Where is injustice coming from? People of Kufa were neither Shia nor Sunni. A lot of people try and say, we say, for example, as Shia, we say, oh, Sunni the unhone jo Imam Hussain ko qatl. Sunni say, you beat your chest because you're upset that you killed Imam Hussain. These are the two arguments used. But the point is, neither of the arguments are correct. Because the people of Kufa were neither Shia or Sunni, they were a concept of Kufiyat. And that kufiyat means knowing haqq but abandoning it. And that kufiyat will still survive in us when the 12th Imam appears and we abandon him. It doesn't matter who it is. There were people in Kufa who were supporters of Imam Hussein, yet their wives and their daughters and their children and their mothers told them, no, why are you going to go and support Hussein for? We will find those same type of people. Why are you going to go and get yourself killed for Imam al-Hujjah? It is this kufiyat, which is the non-qist, the non-adl, non-justice in our thoughts, that we have to strive to make sure that by becoming supporters of justice, that we become supporters of the truth, and in becoming supporters of the truth, we recognize when the 12th Imam appears and become supporters of him. Otherwise, if we become continuous associates of injustice, then when the absolute justice comes and reveals himself, we would have lost track of him. In the same manner as we see that the people of Karbala or the people of Kufa lost track of their Imam. They send thousands of messages to Imam Hussein. And then Imam Hussein sends his representative. We just call Hazrat a Muslim Safir. He's not just an employee of Imam Hussein and just sent to Kufa to go and talk to people. He was sent to Kufa as his representative. In others, his naib. In others, in the absence of Imam Hussein, he was the Imam of the Kufis. They had the responsibility to follow him. They had the duty to come. They were compelled to follow him. And because they did not, they didn't abandon Muslim, but they abandoned the representative of the Imam of the time. And this is an important message before we go into the Messiah. That word, that definition, the representative of the Imam of the time, makes it compulsory on all of us to understand who is the representative of the Imam of our time now. So when the Imam does come, in the same manner that had Hazrat a Muslim remained, he would have brought the Imam of his time into Kufa. The same manner that representative of the Imam of the time is going to become the wasila to bring the Imam of our time over here to us. That is our duty. That is our responsibility. That is the role that we have as believers of the waiters or in those who are in intizar of the 12th Imam, that we prepare ourselves and have the right leaders to lead us, so much so that they take us to the Imam of the time. So when he does come, we become those not only just the 313, but maybe the tens of thousands who will still be there, because there'll be lines of supporters. Don't think if we don't get into the 313 then that's it, we've lost it. We're all different stages. And that's why it's important to recognize that whilst recognizing the Imam of the time, the Kufis abandoned his representative, they abandoned the opportunity to be with the Imam of their time. They didn't just leave the door open for Imam Hussein to be killed in Karbala. They in fact lost the opportunity to be in the presence of their Imam. Imagine the depth of the statement that I've just made to you. They lost the opportunity to be in the presence of their Imam in the same manner as we are presently in a situation where we are not being granted the opportunity to be in his presence. There's a short circuit in our lives which is preventing us to become a person in his audience, in the same manner as the Kufis deprived themselves from becoming an audience, being in the audience of their Imam. We have to be so cautious now. But having said that, those who did recognize the Imam of the time, وَلَا خَوْفٌ وَلَا هُمْ لَا يَحْزَنُونَ, that there was no khawf for them and there was no grief for them that they were leaving Medina. Yes, there was grief that the Holy Family was leaving their grandfather's grave, but there was no fight. There was no hope that they were going to go somewhere else. Events of Arbaeen are not just events of how the last journey back to Medina materialized. The events of Arbaeen are the consequences of what led to Arbaeen. And that's where we have to understand that if the events of Karbala are just to be understood, then we have to understand the pain that this Karbala has brought to the Holy Family and to us as believers. Arbaeen, yes, it saw the release of the Holy Family from the prisons of Kufa, the prisons of Yazid, but those events leading to that release, it needs to be looked at as well. On the day of Ashura, the start of this event of the trip to Sham, when Imam Hussein is killed, it is said that Imam Hussein conducted his fight with Yazid's army in such a manner that it is said in some of the maqtal that when the body of Imam Hussein fell onto the ground, it fell as if it was pinned to some nails on the ground. In other words, the arrows were such heavily shot at the Imam that when his body, all the arrows pierced, that when he fell off the horse, he was lynched on these arrows. Imam Hussein's shahadat was not a simple shahadat. Imam Hussein's shahadat was the consequences of the fact that he had lost his son, he had lost his brother, he had lost all his nephews, he had lost all his supporters. But that was not the only grief that he had. The major grief of the shahadat of events of Karbala was how he sacrificed his baby son, Ali Azhar. How he sacrificed in such an extent that when everybody was gone, it's said that when, for example, when Hazrat Sakina, when she was demonstrating her thirst, the only person who could protect her thirst was Hazrat Abbas. That it is said that when Hazrat Abbas was about to bring the water and he filled all the water carriers, that when his hands were cut, he fell from the horse. Hazrat Sakina is waiting at the camp, waiting for the water carrier to come for the thirst, but she doesn't. They see that the alam has come, but the carrier of the alam is not there. It is said that when this happened, Hazrat Zainab Salamullah alayha did not feel grief about the fact that her brother had become shaheed. In one of her sayings, she says, what concerns me more is when my brother fell off that horse without any hands, how did he land on the sands of Karbala? How did he land on the sands of Karbala? Imam Hussein takes his baby child. It's as if the child is ready to give his sacrifice. It is said that when Imam Hussein brought Ali Azhar to the battlefront, it was as if the army of Yazid was breaking, its hearts were breaking, that it was told to, Hurmala was told to kill this child or kill the speech. And this is what Hurmala did, such that a three-headed arrow was shot to this tiny neck of Ali Azhar. But he's buried in Karbala. All the ladies and every family of the Ahlul Bayt is then taken from Karbala to Kufa. They do not want to go to Kufa because it's the same place that Hazrat Zainab was regarded as a princess of Kufa. What a place to end up as a princess, to be taken is as a prisoner. And it is said that people waited as if they were waiting for some marital event, that they were waiting for the Ahlul Bayt to come and celebrate the Shahadat. And then when they were moved to Sham, it is said that for several hours, the caravan of the Asir waited outside the bazaar of Sham as they were preparing for that bazaar for the Ahlul Bayt to come. And finally, in this sense, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you no reason to cry other than for the tears for Imam Hussein, that in the Sham, in the prison of Sham, when it is said that in those days when they were in the prison was such that there was no roof, that in the dark of the night, the coldness of the village of Sham would come to them, and in the day the heat, that they were not able to protect themselves. But in that period of time, there is another death in that prison. The death of a little daughter of Imam Hussein. The death of Sakina. It is said that when Sakina woke up one night while crying, Yazid was angered by this cry, that he said, well, who is this crying? His guard says, this is Sakina, Hussein's daughter. She's been crying for Hussein. Yazid says, okay, take his head. They took the head to Sakina. Sakina saw his head. As soon as he saw his head, she started complaining, Baba shimmered me. Baba, my earrings were tailed off my head. Baba, every time I cried, they hit me. every time I was left behind, they dragged me. The ladies changed for such that when they raised their heads, my neck would be pulled. When they relaxed, my neck would be pulled. And she cried. And in that crying, she gave her last tears. And when the last tears finished, Hazrat Zain al-Abidin realized, Hazrat Zain al-Abidin said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. When the burial took place, the one who came to wash this baby girl said, what is this illness that this child suffered for? For her garment is stuck to her body. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And then when the day came when the Asir were going to be released, Yazid said to Imam Zain al-Abidin, we're ready to release you. What do you want to do? Imam Zain al-Abidin came and asked Hazrat Zainab, what do you want to do? She said, we would like to stay in Sham for a few days and commemorate the heads of our shuhada. Tell them to give us all our possessions, give our property. One of the most important properties of the Ahlul Bayt which was given to them were the heads of the shuhada. When the heads were brought in the containers, and one and every single head was being collected by the recipient of these heads. You had when Imam Hussein's head came, all the ladies gathered around Imam Hussein's head, but it is said that all the heads were received, and there were two little heads which nobody came to receive. The ladies of Sham asked, whose heads are these? Do they not have a mother? They said that Hazrat Zainab was the guy that said, this is the heads of these are the children of Zainab, and she did not ever grieve about her children until she came to Medina. When she got to Medina, and when she saw the house of Abdullah, when she went into the room to honor Muhammad, then she cried till her desire. Then she cried for honor Muhammad. In the absence, she was so broken. Yet in the sacrifice, she did not grieve. But when they were leaving Sham, there was one other sad event which we need not forget, and that is the event of a mother which was leaving one child in the prison of Sham, and the other side, child in Karbala, where Hazrat Rubab says, why should I leave when I'm leaving my daughter here and my son in Karbala? I pray that inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us on the right path, makes us practicing mu'mineen, that inshallah if we are alive, we are ready to join our Imam of our time, and if we're not alive, that we teach our children and our next